Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to you as well. Today, I'm back with another story time. I know, it's been a minute. If you're new here, hi, my name is Francesca. I make vlogs, hauls, routines, and everything in between. If you like any of that, you should just go ahead and hit subscribe. Also, I do have a whole story time playlist, so make sure that you check that out for some more juicy story times. Let's get into it. So today's story time goes back even further than my other ones. As I said before, I always replace people's names with fake names just to keep up their identity so that no one's being, treated poorly or things are being said to them that are not nice. If you do not like the fake names, just like, I don't know, deal with it, watch another video. I don't know. Anyway, today's story takes place all the way back in about 2016-ish. And I'm going to tell you guys about the time that I got fired. Literally never had been fired before, and it was so bad. So let's do some backstory. I had started working at a startup company. I was still in college when this was happening, junior, senior year. Started working at a startup company that was in the realm of family style entertainment. And with this, of course, whenever you have a brick and mortar starter company, there's a lot of physical labor and things like that have to deal with it. I'll be honest, when I applied to this job, I genuinely thought it was fake. I was like, basically like a job where I'm going to help like establish games and like play them and also like help other people play them. Super weird, right? So I started with this company, and literally my first couple of days, the building itself had not been built yet. So physically, we worked together to build this building. Mentally, we worked together to build this building. Overall, like, I really was able to create a home with this company. And so started this company, and originally when I started, there were a group of business owners, a total of 4. They all knew each other pretty well. We did not have established management, and it was pretty much about maybe 6 or 7 employees. So as time went on, of course, and we gained more employees and the company got more established, we did have to start having some type of management in place. So a group of us, a total of 2 and then eventually 3, were put into place as shift leaders. And then we had people who had smaller leadership roles who were over certain areas as well. And so we were able to help and assist with everything from making appointments, setting events, going through the process of trying to solve any customer issues, training other employees. Looking back on it, the amount of work that I put into this job for the amount of pay is a sin and a shame. Because like my role, when I think about all the things that I did eventually, I did a lot of clerical work. I went and set up like events and stuff at other locations. Like that type of job really should have been paying $13, $14, maybe $15 an hour. At the time, I was only making $10 an hour. Now granted, I was also working part-time at my school's tech like area in the library. And so that was bringing in a little bit of extra income for me as well. So it wasn't too bad. But as I was going through and researching this, I looked at like my old pay stubs because I was trying to figure out like the timeline of when all of this happened. I was working like 50 hours a week at that job. And on average, the job itself, like the actual regular employees who weren't in a position of leadership, maybe got 10, 15 hours on a good week. I was working 45, 46, 50 hours. So that's the context of like how much I cared about this position. So time went on, of course, and as we got bigger and bigger and bigger, a lot of the owners started stepping away. In the very beginning, the owners were very involved. They were there as kind of like our pseudo management. A lot of their family members worked with us. It was a very like, this is a small business thing. Now, I will mention that this particular company is a franchisee of a larger company. And so with that being said, they weren't completely on their own, but when it came to the even larger company, it was relatively new. I remember taking a trip to corporate, for instance, and finding out like how many stores they really had, and it wasn't a lot. So there was not an understanding of how things should go. There came a time where there was a discussion of the fact that the central owner wanted to move away and he wanted to bring up a general manager. Now at this time, we have 3 shift leads. Myself, someone I'm going to call Randy, who actually ended up being one of my roommates. I have not told that roommate horror story quite yet because it's not even his fault that it was a horror story. But Randy was one of my roommates that I previously had. And then Kristen, who was a wonderful, intelligent person. She went on to later take on bigger roles in the company. She had a master's degree in social work. She was also of a mature age where she wasn't in a situation where she was going to just like goof off or like make friends and let them get away with anything. Very direct, stern, good person. Out of the 3 of us, in our mind, it was like, all right, one of us are about to get this GM role. I was still currently in college, and I understood that that was kind of an obstacle in making me a general manager or making me a store manager because I had to work through going to school. A lot of times I was there during the day. I'd go to class, come back, but I could not be 100% available. My roommate Randy was a little bit less of a structured person than me and Christy, and I honestly probably would have been kind of offended if he had gotten a management position. I was kind of like, I guess if you want to give it to him, because me and Randy had been there since the beginning, I would understand. But I really felt like leadership wise, myself and Christy really had it. There was nothing wrong with Christy that she should not have gotten that general manager position. So we kind of all started getting into positions of like, okay, we understand that we're about to have a hierarchy. Really, me and Randy are probably about to become assistant managers. Christy's probably about to be GM. This is about to be our structure. We're about to be a powerhouse. We're going to kill it. And we're all like talking about it together and like getting excited and thinking about things that we want to kind of change and structure and scheduling and hiring and like getting really excited about the concept of Christy possibly moving up. So time goes by. We used to have meetings at one of the owner's house. We go to one of the meetings and he announces that they've chosen a general manager. And we're kind of like, okay, like we already know it's Christy. It's not Christy. So the owner ends up bringing in a friend of his who was, a close friend he had went to church with. They had did kind of outreach programs together, and he decides to bring in this close friend. Now, we're going to call this close friend Isaac. Years later, I find out that Isaac had worked at a charter school and had been fired from the charter school. Isaac had no managerial experience whatsoever. He did, if I'm correct, end up having a degree in theater. I don't know if he had actually finished, but he had like that knowledge of like going to college for theater, but he had never even worked in a managerial role outside of this realm. He had never worked in a job like this before. Isaac was just a friend of someone who had shares in the company. And so Isaac gets hired on as the general manager. And whenever you have somebody getting hired on from the outside, as many as you know, you have to have your current individuals that work there train him. So it kind of worked through this process of like, he had been shadowed through the process already and kind of knew a general concept, but he didn't understand what the company was about. So we spent a long time training this guy. And like a lot of times it would be so frustrating because it's like, I'm trying to get you to understand like this has to be this way, or you need to order this to make sure that we get this done. And it was just like a lot of constant over and over again, like it just not like clicking or getting through. Isaac also had kind of a bad emotional control instances of like when he got nervous or frustrated. There was a lot of times where customers would get hostile or he'd make a mistake, and we would step in a place of assistance and a place of co-leadership and be like, hey, if you do this, this will actually, work out this way. And he'd get upset. We would try to make our own orders because he was having a hard time with the orders. He would cancel them, but still not order what we needed to have ordered. it just really started to divulge into chaos. And again, I don't entirely fault Isaac for the inability to properly manage, because he had never been a manager before. And it's really hard to be a manager and to learn a new process in a company at the same time. So I do acknowledge that. He just should have never been put in that role. Like, maybe been given an assistant manager role to like work with us to really like grow and to understand what was going on. So we went on, and it got to the point where Isaac started giving me, Christy, and Randy tasks that were technically, by the role description of a general manager, the general manager's role. And at first, I was fine with it because some of the things were things that he was messing up. And so I was like, yeah, fine, I will do it because you don't know what you're doing. But then as time came on, it became, not only am I doing your role, I'm watching Christy correct things that you've done wrong. And it's like, we're all doing the work. Like, us three who were originally doing the work, we are doing the work now, and you're collecting a full salary paycheck that we're not getting. And like I said, my last 2 checks I was checking, I was there 45, 50, 55 hours out of the week. And I was a full-time student. And I worked at least 3 days out of the week at the tech facility in our library at my college. And so I just always think about that, and just like the amount of emotion and heart that I put into this company. Like, really, for me, that company was like a child to me. You know, I put everything into it. I put all of my time into it. And it was very important to me. I would say, honestly, it was equally as important to me as my degree was at that time. So as time goes by, me and Isaac start to bump heads. I am always a very assertive person. Never will not be an assertive person. But back then I was a little aggressive with it, just a little bit. So we would bump heads because something would be done wrong, and I'd be like, Isaac, as I've said to you before, this is how it's done. I can show you, and we can sit down and go back over it if you like. And he'd be like, no, I got it. I just made a mistake, and brush me off. Specifically, I remember there was a conversation about certain items that needed to be ordered, and I would basically be like, hey, look, we're running out of those. It's urgent, literally need it to function. And he was like, I'll do it later. And I was like, I can do it. I'll do it later. And we end up having this huge blowout because, of course, he doesn't order the item. And we end up having a customer complaint, a whole big fiasco with one of the employees because they are getting the backlash from the customer. And I end up pulling him aside, and I'm like, hey, I mean, no disrespect by talking to you, but this was something I alerted you of a while ago. And I'm starting to notice a pattern where we're alerting you of things, but nothing's getting done about it. And I say to him, is there something we could do to better assist you, to better help you? Because right now I feel like we're not working as a team, and this isn't working, and this isn't making sense. And he starts getting back towards me, starts to elevate his voice, starts yelling at me, basically telling me I need to focus on my own job. And I'm a little smarty pants still. So my response is, what's my job? Because it seems like my job is just cleaning up after you. Because he's raising his voice, and I'm like, all right, we're getting to a point that we don't need to get, because now I'm going to get there. And he gets all scuffy, and he was like, your job is to stay in your lane. And I was like, bet, let me stay in my lane. So I spend the whole rest of that week being very petty and literally not doing anything outside of my job description. He wasn't getting things done properly. He was making mistakes while he was interacting with customers. There were constant issues happening because he told me to do my job, and I did my job. So there comes a point where I'm looking at Christy and I'm looking at Randy, and I'm like, guys, we're doing this man's job. We're not getting paid with it. Somebody needs to say something. I'm stressed. I have, schoolwork to worry about, but I'm sitting here having to come back and forth to the store to make sure things are correct, make sure things are fine. Like, it's too much mental strain on me. We need to say something, because either the compensation needs to come up to a point where I can quit my other job, or this needs to get fixed and this needs to get resolved. Mind you, at this time, I also don't have a car. So I'm like, catching a bus, Ubering, getting dropped off, getting to work however I can. So that alone is stress, on top of school, on top of the other job, on top of like life stuff. And I'm like, this has just gone too far. My camera decided to die on me. But what I was saying was, basically, we had all came together and agreed, like, this is ridiculous. We're basically doing this man's job. Like, we need to do something about it. And I'm going to pause right here and tell y'all, listen. If your work friends are ever like, yeah, let's go talk to the manager, make sure it's a let's. Make sure that it's a collective. Make sure you're not putting yourself out there without any kind of support or backing or anything, because people get real quiet. They get real quiet when stuff goes bad. Now, I will say I'll give it to Christy, because she was not really like, yeah, rah, 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 let's go. She was kind of in the realm of coming from a mature place of like, it's unfortunate, but this is who's in charge. And when I did end up leaving, she actually like tried to stand up for me. Additionally, I did for a while come back part-time and work for this company, which is why I've waited so long to do this story time. And she actually hired me back. So kudos to Christy. Randy, on the other hand, you scary, okay? Listen, we might get into that roommate horror story. We just might. Anyway, me being bold and assertive and having this like unnecessary power and understanding of thinking like, I started with this company, I helped with this startup, my opinion matters. And my opinion does matter, but not in this situation. I contact the main owner, the person who had worked as our general manager basically for a long time, and I asked him, can we talk? Can we have a discussion? And he was like, yeah, of course. And he was like, what's it about? It's like, Isaac, like, I just need to talk to you about Isaac. So I never gave him any context, never said anything to him. I was closing that night. I was the closing manager. And so he came in a little bit before we closed up, kind of watched and listened as I worked through everything. I would often do my homework while I was at work if there was nothing going on. And so like he kind of talked to me, asked me about my homework. So chill. Dude was so calm. So calm. And pretty much after we get done, he's like, go ahead and lock up the doors. Let's go sit down in the kitchen and talk. So we sit down and he's like, what did you want to talk about? And I'm like, pretty much, I don't feel like Isaac's equipped to be a manager. I think that maybe it would be good if he gets a little bit more time learning. Maybe he can go over to corporate for a little while, get some training, but it's really putting a strain on me and the rest of the managers. I expressed everything that Christy and Randy had expressed to me. I expressed everything that I was feeling. I pointed out the situation where he raised his voice at me and yelled at me, and how I felt like the foundation of this company was really built on a shared experience. It was really built on being able to have that voice, being able to be creative, being able to be your own person. And when someone's yelling at you, you're taking that away. So I say all of that, and he's just kind of like, just nodding his head. And when I'm done, he's like, well, there's something I actually would like to talk to you about. And I'm like, oh my God, he's about to fire Isaac. And I'm like, he just let me get all that out to vent. And he pretty much is like, Isaac is here to stay. I don't feel as though Isaac needs additional training. And if I don't feel that way, then he definitely doesn't need it. If taking on additional job tasks to help and assist Isaac to get comfortable, mind you, this is like 3 months in, he should have been comfortable. But if that is something that you're not interested in, maybe you don't need to be here. And I like kind of make a shocked face, and he's like, I don't understand why you're shocked. And I'm like, oh, so this is what we're doing. And he goes on to talk about how, Isaac is someone that he trusts. He put him in the position because he knows it's something that he can do. And that's an understanding that I need to have. And it's important that everyone carries their weight. Basically telling me, do Isaac's job for no extra pay or get out. And I was like, so you're really telling me, like, suck it up or I'm fired. And he was like, yeah. So I pretty much at that point, I'm like, all right, well, I don't see the point of us continuing forward this conversation because it doesn't seem like it's going to get anywhere productive. You've made your stance, and I understand that that's not going to change. And so he says to me, well, I'm going to go ahead and place you on a 2 weeks unpaid suspension. And at that point, I turn off from I'm annoyed and I'm frustrated, and it goes straight to anger. And I'm literally like, you're joking. And like, I'm chuckling, I'm getting upset, it's in my face. And he was like, no, if you feel like Isaac's leadership is so bad, I think you need some time to think about it and to see if you still feel as though his leadership is that bad. And so I stop and I'm like, I have bills to pay, I have rent to pay, I have this, I have that. I cannot take a 2 weeks unpaid suspension. And when I say to him, I was like, can you explain to me what I am being suspended for? Now, Adele HR recruiting me right now, I'm going to pause for a second. He could have told me I'm suspending you for insubordination. And honestly, in retrospect, he could have. But this man says to me, I'm suspending you because I feel as though you're feeding into drama that the employees are having. And I was like, I never mentioned any employees. If you're saying that I'm feeding into drama with the assistant managers, then maybe. And I'm like, but there was no drama, sir. And I'm basically telling him, like, look, if I need to be scheduled on different shifts than him, I just need to be paid. Like, I have to work. That's why I have a job. And he gets frustrated, and he's pretty much like, you know what? You're done. And I'm like, excuse me? He was like, no, if you don't feel like a 2 week unpaid suspension is something that you can handle, then you're done. And throughout this conversation, he kept doing that. If you can't blank, then blank. And I feel like it was never if you can't blank. It was always, this is my opinion. Like, from the start, it was, you're sucking it up. From the start, it was, I'm not paying you for a 2 week suspension. And then from the start, it was, you're done, I'm firing you. And I genuinely believe, even if I had taken the 2 weeks unpaid suspension and didn't try to level with him, I feel like he would have just fired me when I came back. And it was really just, let me do this 2 week suspension so I can quickly find somebody and then still fire you. So I was absolutely devastated. Like I said, this place was my heart. This place was my soul. And it was something that I did not walk into this situation thinking would happen. My mom had actually picked me up from work that day. And I'm like 20, 21 years old. And I remember getting in the car and just bawling. I was like heaving, bawling. 2 seconds from a panic attack, I was hyperventilating. I was just bawling. And I remember my mom like trying to get me to tell her what had happened. And it was like the sequence of these things happening did not make sense. Like, I asked for a meeting because someone's not doing their job. I got told that I was suspended. I got fired. And I couldn't like verbalize it. And my mom had went in and been like, what'd you do with my baby? But no, she didn't go in there like that. She was just like, I don't understand why she's crying. She was in here. She looked just fine. And she came out here and she's crying. What happened? And he's like, you know, she's fired. She couldn't get on board with new management. And I just don't need any kind of toxicity or anything like that in the workplace. So she's fired. And it took me a long time to get past that. I ended up going into the movie theater job. If you haven't seen that Storytime, like what it's like to work in a movie theater, that's where I ended up going. And I absolutely loved that job. Funny story, months later, he ends up firing that general manager because he didn't know what he was doing. So I got fired for nothing. I genuinely think if I had not gotten fired for that company, I would probably still be working for them to this day. I am very thankful that I did get to experience other opportunities. And I didn't just stay with them, but I could very much so see myself staying with that company, going towards like marketing or HR for them, and that being it. But yeah, that's just my little story time about the time I got fired. If you guys enjoyed this, go ahead and leave me a heart down in the comments down below. Make sure that you, if you are watching this before July 29th, that you go and enter in my giveaway for a free Stanley and a Target gift card. Go ahead and enter it on that. I'll be announcing the winner on July 29th. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, have a good rest of your day. And mind your own business. Trust me, mind your own business.